Ladies and gentlemen, the Albert and Mary Lasker Foundation presents two awards, one for clinical research and one for basic medical research in diseases that are main causes of crippling disability and death. The purpose of these awards is to recognize and honor individuals or groups who have made significant contributions in these areas. Last year, the jury, which I am chairman, and the jury is here today, Mr. President, had the great honor and privilege of selecting you for one of these awards, and a special citation has been prepared for this purpose. I should like now to read the citation. Without health, there is no happiness, and attention to health then should take the place of every other object. These words were written by Thomas Jefferson in 1787. Mr. President, you have shown that attention to health in an unparalleled degree. In your historic health message to the Congress on January 7, 1965, you observed that the 88th Congress wrote a proud and significant record of accomplishment in the fields of health legislation. I have every confidence that this Congress will write an even finer record that will be remembered with honor by generations of Americans to come. Your prophecy has become a shining reality, for no Congress in the history of this republic has enacted more legislation to expand medical knowledge and to spread its fruits to millions of Americans hitherto denied the life-saving miracles of modern medical research. In this brief citation, we can only highlight the most significant of the more than dozen major pieces of health legislation recommended by you and enacted into law by the 89th Congress. For more than 2 decades, our country has debated the issue of how to bring medical care within the financial reach of millions of our elderly citizens. This year, 30 years after President Franklin Delano Roosevelt recommended the pioneer Social Security legislation guaranteeing that our older citizens would not have to spend their declining years in poverty and despondency, you recommended and the Congress enacted the great Medicare bill, whose central purpose is to permit our people to pay during their working years for protection against the crushing costs of medical care in their later years. Upon your recommendation, the 89th Congress provided funds for a comprehensive pattern of new health services for our 75 million children without equal in our time. While the major thrust of this program will bring the boon of high-quality medical care to 15 million children of families who live in poverty, additional provisions authorize diagnosis and treatment for millions of children of preschool age and expanded projects for children who are mentally retarded, emotionally disturbed, and physically handicapped. In this year alone, more than 1 million productive citizens will lose their gallant battle for life and dignity to 3 ancient enemies of mankind: heart disease, cancer, and stroke. Apart from the indescribable agony which these diseases inflict upon both victims and their loved ones, they constantly sap the vitality of this country, costing an estimated $5 billion a year in direct medical expenses and in losses to our productive economy. When you had invited to the White House, you thanked them for giving our people a gift of hope for a long and happy life. Mr. President, we would like to turn the tables on you by pointing out that it was you who gave those assembled doctors and thousands of their colleagues in all parts of the land a precious opportunity to transmit to their sick and suffering patients the latest in medical research knowledge designed to restore them to health and happiness. Above and beyond these achievements, the 89th Congress passed the most sweeping statute in our history to aid in the training of additional medical manpower. It cleared legislation greatly expanding the role of our national government in aiding the construction of research laboratories. It voted a measure greatly increasing our national participation in the building and operation of a network of community mental health centers. Ms. Lasker, Dr. DeBakey, Dr. Lusk,
members of the Awards Committee, and members of the Lasker Foundation, distinguished guests. I come here this morning to accept gratefully the 1965 Albert Lasker Award for Leadership in Health. But I want to make it clear to all of those who participate in this ceremony and all of those who may read of it, that I share this honor with the members of the 88th and 89th Congress who played such an important part in translating our recommendations and our proposals into reality. They have declared that not only life, but a healthy life must be among man's inalienable rights. Since I became your president a little over 2 years ago, we have increased our federal investment in education from a little less than $5 billion to a little more than $10 billion per year. Since I became your president a little over 2 years ago, we have increased your investment in health from a little less than $5 billion to a little over $10 billion this year. Now, this is not just a box score figure. It means that this coming year we will spend $10 billion more on education and health than we were spending when I became president. It means we'll have reduced death and disability. It will mean a longer lifespan for our people. It means that we will triumph over the preventable or controllable diseases which still afflict our citizens. We have the lowest loss rate for wounded soldiers that any army ever had on a battlefield. In Vietnam, we're losing less than 1 out of every 100 men who are wounded. The enemy is losing a much, much higher percentage, and that one that we're losing is less than half of what we lost in Korea. That speaks for the great advances that the science of medicine and the great skill that the doctors and surgeons have displayed in that area of the world. And where income and productivity are lowest in America, disease and disability and death are highest in America. As family incomes decline, infant mortality ruthlessly goes up. And when medical care is dispensed, the 15 million children of the poor always await at the end of the line. Well, we mean to change that. We cannot stop there, because every single minute in the underprivileged 2/3 of the world, 20 people die of malaria and smallpox and cholera and other infectious diseases. During the few minutes that I'm speaking to you this morning, 100 persons, 100 of our fellow human beings, will die of ailments that we have learned to control in the first 50 years of this century. In the underdeveloped 2/3 of the world, the average lifespan is only 35 years. 35 years that is very often plagued with a great deal of what is today unnecessary suffering. And that is why when we were making our studies last year of our aid programs, when some of you were attending me at Bethesda, we decided then that instead of participating as we had been to the extent of trying to industrialize some nations and trying to improve their communications and trying to build them concrete highways and so forth, that we would direct our efforts to those who would help themselves, and help themselves particularly in the field of improving the body and health, improving the mind with schools, and improving the human being with food. So we are concentrating our energies in our aid program and our investment in the world today on education, on health, and on food. We had a great demonstration of the Congress's ability to act and act wisely, thoroughly, and somewhat promptly in the measure that they completed yesterday, the Indian Food Resolution, whereby the people of America will send to India something in the neighborhood of $1 billion worth of food to help feed some 35 or 40 million people who might not pull through at all without this food. And the thing that gave me such great pride was that there in Congress, made up of 535 members of both parties, members of both sexes, members of several races, there was not a single vote cast against that bill in either house. That speaks not only for the intelligence of the Congress and the foresight of the Congress, but the compassion of the American people. So I submitted to Congress the International Health Act of 1965, an act which will create an international career service to health, an act which will help our health professionals strengthen medical training and gain valuable experience in the developing countries. It will combat malnutrition. It will help conquer disease which disables millions of people. It aims at eradicating smallpox by 1975, at freeing 800 million people from malaria in the next 10 years, of sharply curtailing measles and cholera. The magnitude of this task makes the work of the last 50 years, great as it's been, seem very small. Our work in health is tragically incomplete. Now, I know some of you are going to remind me that we didn't get a rule on that health bill the other day. We didn't expect to get a rule that day. That never did get in our report, but two of our members left early because they didn't anticipate a vote. And when they did vote, because they weren't there, the rule wasn't reported. But somehow or other, I kind of have a feeling that reporters will get two stories for the price of one. We may get that bill reported some of these days, and I know that all of you will join with me in expressing hope that we do. So this morning I accept this award with the pledge that every dollar of it will go to charitable causes in the field of health and education. I accept this award with the hope that we can do more at home, and then with all the power of my mind and my voice and my hand to try to turn the vision of the American people beyond the borders of the United States and turn it to the lands where suffering people await answers that only the leadership of America can give. Years ago, Louis Pasteur said, "I hold the unconquerable belief that science and peace will triumph over ignorance and war, that nations will come together, not to destroy but to construct, and that the future belongs to those who accomplish most for humanity." What will we accomplish for humanity? Well, I'm so proud that Mrs. Lasker and her distinguished and beloved and generous husband, who came from my state of Texas, have already accomplished much for humanity with their leadership and with their generosity. And as long as their lives to be saved, and long as their bodies to be healed, as long as their mouths to be fed, I cannot for a moment ever forget that history will judge us, and she's looking over our shoulder now. And I know, too, that Mary Lasker and the members of this distinguished jury will never let the people of this land forget it. I could observe that they're going to want me to spend more money than I can spend this year. But I guess if I have to get overridden on anything, I hope that the generosities will be displayed in the field of food for our children, education for their minds, and health and medicine and doctor, dental care for their bodies, because there's so much in this world to do, and there's such a little time that we have to do it. Thank you all. Leader in this field and done absolutely marvelous work with some of our folks in Vietnam. Tell them about it briefly.
I just told the President that the 56 paraplegics that he brought over here on November the 1st, that 80% are up walking on their braces and crutches. Their surgery's done, their infections are cleared, and they will be ready to go home and walk off the airplane in another 60 days. And I hope while we have time to train the doctors and the personnel to take care of the 300 behind, that maybe you let us bring another group over to take their place while they're as a holding operation. Second, in a country where there are 35,000 amputees, our training program has now been in effect only 6 weeks. We have 40 brace makers in training, and in a program that was producing 6 limbs a month, in the first 6 weeks, we made and fitted 300 patients who are now walking and back home again.